My name is Frank Montolio, Montolio.
Is that from Italy?
No, everybody thinks it is. My father was an immigrant from Spain.
Spain?
Yes, on the
Ah.
northeast, Catalan region, I think, of Spain, below the French border.
When was it? When did your father
I remember,
immigrated?
1920. He was 17 years old. He was born in 1903.
Mm-hmm.
He was 20 years old. He came over here with his father, whose father thought he would never stay because he came alone. And my father was determined to stay in the country, and his father stayed with him for 6 months, and he went back to Spain, and my father then...
Leaving your father alone here?
No, yes.
Wow.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Wow, that must have been hard for your father.
I think it was. There was one friend of his from his hometown in Spain that had come before him, and so I think he met up with him. But my father had a very successful career. He started in the hotel business, and he started in the menial jobs, dishwashing, cleaning out sewers, and that kind of stuff. And he rose to become one of the most talented executive head chefs in the city of Detroit.
Chef?
Yes.
Ah.
He was the head chef at some very exclusive Oakland Hills Country Club in Birmingham. My father was the head chef there, very prestigious.
What's his specialty? What's the best food that he could cook?
Well, at home it was a dish he called, in Spanish it was said arroz con pollo. You know what that means?
I'm feel already hungry.
Well, no, it's chicken and rice.
Chicken and rice?
Chicken. Pollo is poultry, chicken. And so it was the arroz is rice. So rice with chicken.
You had plenty of those.
Well, I still make that dish today, and
you do?
Yeah.
Oh,
it's my favorite dinner. I was born in 1931 in Detroit, Michigan, and I started public school in Detroit. I went to Webster Elementary School, no longer there. At high school, my parents sent my brother and I across the river to Windsor, Ontario, Canada, and we went to a place called Assumption College High School. It was an all-boys Catholic school, boarded there for 4 years, a great education with the Basilian priests. It was a really, really fine 4-year experience in the land of academia.
Did you like study?
I wasn't a great student, but I enjoyed it was an all-boys school, and I enjoyed the 4 years. I really did. I go back there whenever I have the opportunity.
What were you doing when the Korean War broke out?
I had gone, after I graduated from high school in '49, I had gone to a business school and obtained an associate's degree in accounting. And I was hired in August of 1951 to go to work as an accountant. And then I was only there for 6 months. And then in February of '52, I was drafted into the Army. And so when the war broke out, it was 1950, right?
Yeah, 1950, June 25th of 1950.
Yeah, I was just 4 months out of high school, well, a year out of high school at that point. I was going to business college.
Did you know anything about Korea or Asia at the time?
No.
Nobody paid attention to Asia at the time?
Not until the war broke out. No, I had never heard of Korea until
What
then.
did you hear from radio or newspaper about the Korea and the Korean War broke out?
You know, I can't really recall anything that sticks out or that's distinctive or memorable. To me, it was a place where we had military people whose lives were at risk. 2 good friends of mine that I went to high school with endured a very hard time in Korea. I don't know how long you've got, but this is an interesting story. They were both very good football players in high school, and they had received a full boat scholarship at University of Detroit to go there to play football. Well, as freshmen at the University of Detroit, they're unable to play full-time and make the team on a first-string basis. The Marine Corps had a football team. They joined the Marine Corps Reserve to play football, and they wound up going to Korea when it first started.
Oh, boy.
And the 2 of them went through some very serious, the frozen chosen, and both came back with seriously frostbitten feet. Both survived. One got wounded, the other one didn't. But they had a very, very hard time.
What's their name?
They were both Irish. One was Tom O'Neill, and the other was Pat Garvin.
your good friend?
Yes.
Are they still alive?
Tom O'Neill is still alive. Pat Garvin is not. And I saw Tom O'Neill just a couple of years ago.
So, you joined the military in 1951.
1952, I was drafted, yes.
Oh, so
February,
you were drafted
February 1952.
February
4.
4. What was your reaction being drafted and the possibility that you might go to war and being killed?
You know, when you're young, you're immortal. Those thoughts never went through my mind. I was drafted. It was you didn't contest it or complain or object about it. It was the honorable thing to do. And as a citizen of the country, it was my responsibility, if called, to go, and I did.
What was your reaction of your family about you going to the
Well,
war?
I think at the time I went in, they probably weren't concerned until I finished basic training and I got orders. And the orders I got were not specifically to go to Korea. They were to go to the Far East.
Uh-huh.
And when I landed in Japan is when I got the assignment to go to Korea.
What was your basic military training? What was the specialty of your service?
I was trained at Fort Lee in Virginia, which is quartermaster based. And so I went through the regular 16 weeks of basic training. I got some kind of supply clerks training during that 16 weeks. And I was not a marksman. I have one eye that is nearly blind. I don't see well out of this one eye.
Oh.
And I think that probably provided that, plus I had some education. So I think that probably kept me out of the infantry. And so I went there as a supply clerk, and then ultimately was a supply sergeant in the company that I was assigned to.
So remember when you leave for Korea?
It was end of July, 1st of August, 1952, from Seattle. We left from Seattle on a troop ship.
Mm-hmm. And where did you arrive? When?
Yokohama.
When?
It was a 16-day boat trip, so it was the end of July, first week of August. It was in Yokohama for 3-4 days, and then we got on a boat and sent us to Korea. We landed in Incheon. And then there was a, truck picked us up, the ones that were assigned to a specific region of Korea. And my first assignment was in Wonju.
Wonju.
W-O-N-J-U.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then subsequently, we were there for 6 months, and then they moved us up to Hongchon, which was further north.
Mm-hmm.
I think, as I remember, Hongchon was 30 to 50 miles from the demilitarized zone. Well, at that time, there was no demilitarized zone because they were still fighting.
Right, yeah. Tell me about, you said that you were inventory, what was your specialty, I'm sorry?
A supply sergeant.
Supply surgeon. You became the surgeon? What was the rank when you were in Korea for the first time?
Private.
Private. And you rank up to the sergeant?
Yes.
Wow, that's a fast promotion.
Well, no, it wasn't. When I was private, I was there for 14 months, I guess, 16 months.
Okay.
And I never got my first stripe, the PFC, until I was there for 6 or 8 months.
Mm-hmm.
And I was supply sergeant as a corporal. And I only got the sergeant,
okay.
Was promoted to sergeant maybe a month before I rotated home. The money was tight then, and they had a freeze on promotions. So they were not giving out promotions of rank very handily. So.
What was your duty? Tell me about the typical day that you worked. You worked in the rear area, right? Not in the front line.
That's correct.
Right. So tell me about your typical day. What did you do? What kind of items that you were dealing with, and what kind of duties were you supposed to carry out?
Well, it was somewhat varied. When I went into the supply room, I was there for a short time, and the supply sergeant then and I didn't get along. So I asked to be removed, and the company that I was assigned to was the 306th Engineering Dump Truck Company. And our job was to maintain the roads. I don't know, you're a young man, but when I was in Korea, there were no cement or blacktop roads. Everything was gravel and dirt. Mm-hmm. And they were very rough, winding through the mountains with the S-turns. And So our job was to keep the roads open so for supplies and troops could make it over the roads to get to the front. And so we spread gravel every day. So I drove truck for, I don't know, 6 months. And then finally the supply sergeant that I didn't get along with, he was dishonorably discharged. He was not a good man. And when they let him go and discharged him, I took his place. So as a supply sergeant, my job then was to make sure that the men in our company, if their clothes wore out, they needed a new pair of boots or jacket or whatever, they would come into the supply room and they would place their order, and then I would make trips up to Seoul or wherever to pick up the replacements.
How was the situation in the front line? All day fighting all the time? Was it severe battles, always engaged? How was the situation at the time that you were doing service?
Oh, there was constant war, constant battle going on. We had one squad of our company was deployed on temporary duty up near Kumwa, as I remember. And they had to maintain the road going up through the mountain pass. And I made trips up there periodically to service our people that were up there, to replace their supplies or whatever they needed. I know the one time there was an artillery shell that went zooming over the camp that I was in. So we were right there. That one squad that was detached was right there at the front line. I think it was not as severe then, except for Pork Chop Hill. That was a very severe battle at the very end of the war, and they began negotiations for the peace treaty. I think somewhere in February or March of '53. Mm-hmm. It went on for an extended period of time, and I remember how upset I was to think that we have men out there that were battling and risking their lives, while some guys in Panmunjom sat around a table and talked about ending the war, and how fruitless it was to put your life at risk knowing that tomorrow it might be over. Mm-hmm. For what? For one more hill? It never made any sense to me. It was my biggest disappointment while I was in Korea was that peace talks.
What was the happiest moment during your service?
Oh gosh, probably my rotation home, I suppose.
It's a stupid question to ask, but I want to confirm with you.
Yeah.
When did you hear that you are going back to home?
Well, that's an interesting story too. I was in Korea for 15, 16 months, and weekly there were troops being rotated home. They'd served their time and they were going home. In the 16 months I was there was never one of those scheduled departures that did not go out on time until mine. And my orders came through. I was supposed to leave on December 7th, which was Pearl Harbor Day. And I was marking the calendar every day, mark the days off. And so we got word on December the 5th or the 6th that the ship that we were to be returned home on had some mechanical difficulties, and our return home was going to be delayed. And it was. It was for 2 weeks, more than 2 weeks. We boarded ship in Incheon Harbor on Christmas Eve of 1953. I'll never forget that. I had planned, if I had gone on December 7th, I would have been home in time for Christmas. But because of the delay, I never got home until January 20th, about that time.
How much were you paid? Do you remember?
You know what? I think when I first got there it was $50 a month, and when I got to be sergeant, I think it was $75.
What was the most sort of scarce resources and supplies there?
Water.
Water?
Yeah, the water was terrible. We used to, when I was driving the truck, I used to have to go to the water supply depot, which was maybe 5-10 miles from. At that time, we were living in the tents, the squad tents. And I used to have to haul water back from when you took it out, it was almost yellow, and it smelled very strongly of chlorine because they had to disinfect. And as you remember, well, maybe you don't, you're a young man, the sanitary facilities in Korea during those years was not very good. There was no indoor plumbing. And they used, of course, the human waste for fertilizing. Yep. And that ran off into the streams, and so when we got our water from wells or wherever it came from, they had to.
You never know what's in it there.
Pardon me?
You never know what's in there.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
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 What did you eat? Where, I mean, did you sleep in the tent, and what kind of food did you eat? Was it sea ration, or did you have hot meals?
No, we did. We slept in tents, squad tents. They held maybe, I think, 12 soldiers, as I remember. We had a big oil burner in the middle of the tent, so in the wintertime, we were surprisingly warm enough.
Mm-hmm.
We had, good comforters or sleeping bags, I should say. So we were never cold, sleeping in the tent. We had our own mess hall, and the food was Army food. It was not sea ration. The sea rations, that was for the GIs that were in the trenches, the foot soldiers. They didn't have mess tents for those folks.
So you were kind of lucky.
Yes. Yes, I was.
Mm.
Yep.
Mm.
Yep.
What was the food that you mostly missed?
Uh,
I am craved for this.
Yeah.
What was it?
Probably bacon.
Bacon.
Yeah. And because I was a supply sergeant in the Army, the supply sergeant and the mess sergeant get along pretty good, and they trade back and forth. The chef, the master, I'm sorry, the mess sergeant or the mess cook wants something from the supply tent,
Mm-hmm.
clothes and what have you, new boots, and of course the supply sergeant wants some food. So the mess sergeant used to give me cans of was bacon that was canned, and I would tear open that can and cook it on the oil stove we had going in the wintertime.
Uh-huh.
It got awful hot. Put a pan on there, and I'd cook the bacon in that pan. It was bacon, lettuce, and tomato sandwich was well, of course tomatoes were not available, but.
Have you been back to Korea?
I wanted to go back, and I had a very good friend. His name was Dr. Kim, and he was Korean. And he and I played golf together until a few years ago, and he since has passed. And I asked him one day, I said, his name was Chung. I said, Chung, I'd like to go back to Korea and see the country where I once was. And he said, you would never recognize it, Frank. He said that Seoul, is like New York City. When I was there wasn't a building standing in Seoul, except for the government building that, I don't know what to call it, the State House over here.
Yeah.
I don't know what they called it in Korea. But the buildings that were standing had been bombed out and windows broken and just a shell of a building. And there were no paved roads or anything. And so anyhow, he kind of discouraged me because I'm not a big city. I mean, I could care less about going to New York City. But I would like to go back to where I was first arrived over there at Wonju and Hongcheon.
Do you know that there is a revisit program provided by the Korean government?
I just saw that article in the magazine. Yes, and I guess
you pay 0.5%. I mean, 50% of the international airfare, including the domestic, and then everything else is free for a week.
I did see that, and I've been thinking about that.
What do you think is the legacy of Korean War and Korean War veterans?
Oh, without question, it's what a wonderful thing has happened in that country because of our presence there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if when I was all done with Korea and then we got involved in Vietnam, I kept thinking to myself that we Americans have to learn how to keep our nose out of other people's business. But in the case of Korea, when I see the wonderful things that have happened in that country because of our presence, I think we did the right thing there. We did abate the growth of communism,
Mm-hmm.
and Korea is a well industrialized country now, and they have the capitalistic system there, as far as I know, and the people are, I think, wealthy and happy, and they're productive people, hardworking. So I think that's the legacy as I see it.
Mm-hmm.
It was a wonderful, wonderful thing that happened over there.
Mm. If you are asked to make comments about your experience in the war and about kind of lessons to give to young generations to come, what will be your message to young Americans now? I guess we're talking about international relations now.
After Korea, when I came home when I was still young, and then Vietnam occurred, and then more recently with Iraq and Afghanistan, my attitude was pretty much that it's time for us to become more isolationist and stay out of other people's business. And I guess I still believe that. But there are, I think, plenty of opportunities for this country to be the benefactor to third world countries that are still in poverty. I think President Bush did a wonderful thing for the African people. And did a wonderful, wonderful thing. What we did over there to help feed a starving nation and get food to them, I think, is wonder stuff. But militarily, I think we got to pull in our horns, and Korea was an exception. It was a different time. I don't know if we'll ever have an opportunity like that again, but Korea turned out to be a wonderful thing, not only for the Koreans, but I think we Americans did a good job over there.
So after you come back, what did you do?
Oh, I had a long. I came back. First thing I did was I started college on the GI Bill, which is a wonderful benefit from the government.
Good.
And I was working, so I was going to school nighttime. I got married in 1957, and we had our first child in 1958. And at that time, I graduated from college. And
what did you study?
Accounting. I continued with my accounting. Got a bachelor's degree in accounting. And I had the good fortune to become the assistant controller for the Detroit Red Wings hockey club. I don't know if you're a hockey fan or if that means anything to you or not, but, well, the Red Wings today are one of the most prominent professional hockey teams, and they have following all over the country, sort of like the Boston Red Sox do. But it was a wonderful opportunity to be on board with a professional sports organization and be associated with the celebrities of the day. Gordie Howe was then the #1 player in the National Hockey League, and worked. Of course, he was a Red Wing. So I was there for 4 years. And 1961, my wife and I, and we have 2 kids then, 2 children. We moved to Massachusetts and went to work for a building contractor, and ultimately had 2 or 3 of my own businesses over a period of 20 years.
Wow.
One of them was recreational related. We built an indoor hockey rink and indoor tennis club.
Wow.
And then from there I bought a real estate franchise. I bought a Remax franchise and ran that for 10 years and then retired.
Very successful.
Well, the free enterprise system doesn't guarantee anything.
Right.
A couple of those businesses I hurt for a long, in fact, the first year or two, and one of them I didn't take a salary, I didn't take a wage because the money, all I was making was enough to pay the bills, and I was the last one on the list to get paid, so I did not earn a wage. But that's part of the free enterprise system that I support, and but yeah, part of it was successful and part of it was struggle, but that's the way the system works, and I can deal with that.
Now I want to present the Certificate of Ambassador for Peace. It's from the Ministry of Patriots and Veterans Affairs of the Republic of Korea. I'll write your name in Korean as it pronounced, and then I'll write your name in English. Frank Montolio.
Correct.
Thank you very much.
All right, sir.